Great, thank you very much for that. So welcome to the webinar on financial fitness. Thank you for joining and taking time out to join Ivy and myself for the next 1 hour. So I'll just briefly start on introducing ourselves. So my name is Arva Velika and I'm the head of operations for CiC. And my previous role was with Money and Pension Service and Money Advice Service, worked within the financial vulnerability. And also, I'm quite looking forward to this financial fitness webinar today. Ivy is the operations manager at CiC, and she's been here just over a year as well. And her background is also from Money and Pension Service and Money Advice Service. We both work together. So we're quite passionate about financial well-being, financial capability, and making sure all of yourselves have some understanding of, how to protect yourself financially, what practical support is out there as well, because many people are not even aware of the offerings out there. So the next 1 hour is going to be where Ivy and I will both be delivering some slides to you and some information on financial capability and well-being. Give you some practical tips and guides as well, some figures of what the United Kingdom stats is telling us at the moment as well. And then towards the end, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions. However, what you can do is put down some of the questions along the way in the chat function. Ivy will be looking at that. I'm controlling the slides from my side. So yes, I think we're ready to go, but I'd like to just thank you again for joining this webinar. So
you're on mute, Arva.
Have I been mute all this time?
No, it just happened.
Oh God, okay. And I can't seem to. Yep, I can change my slide. Right, so the agenda is going to be about what is financial fitness, just to give you a brief understanding of that, the impact of life events on your mental and financial well-being. Because people forget that actually it's about the life events that we go through that impact both these elements of our well-being and the domino effect. And then managing your money, we'll go through that a little bit, where to get the help and support, and some Q&As as well towards the end. So financial well-being, actually, what is financial fitness? How is financial well-being linked to mental health, and what could impact our financial being and financial well-being and our mental health? These are the three critical questions to ask ourselves when, we're looking at financial well-being as a whole. But in a nutshell, there's a lot of data out there. There's a lot of definitions of what is financial fitness, financial capability, financial well-being, and all. But the one that's really is quite important is what Salary Finance have defined it as. It was quite an interesting one. And it says that financial well-being. So first, I'm going to actually just explain a little bit about financial well-being. Is affected by a wide range of factors, which is our relationship with money as a child, our age, gender, earning history, life events, a geographical location, which is where we live, and who our friends are. So if you keep all of that in your backdrop, then we come to actually the definition of financial well-being and financial fitness and all. And it is about, and this is Ivy's definition. I'm not going to take the credit away. And she has always said it's about making the most of your money day to day, dealing with the unexpected, and being on track for a healthy financial future. Financial fitness is about financial well-being and feeling secure and in control. A lot of the problems right now, a lot of us face in our everyday life is where we don't feel in control. We're caught off guard. We're blindsided by some overhead costs that might come up. We actually don't know what to do. Even if we know there's a bill going to come our way, we are not prepared and we're not in control. How we're going to spend that and how we're going to, keep on top of our finances. People who experience financial well-being actually are less stressed about money. So anyone who's in a good space financially and they're feeling well about it are less stressed about money. This in turn has positive effects on your overall mental and physical health and on their relationships. It's the same thing of mental well-being and mental health. If you're in a good space mentally, it has a whole positive impact on your other areas of your life as well. So that's, I thought it's quite a good place to start it off, just to remind ourselves, what does financial well-being mean? And actually it's the same thing as when you're feeling well physically or when you're feeling well emotionally and mentally as well. If you look at the next one, I'm not going to go through all of this. This I've just put out there for yourselves to have an insight over stats and figures. But this is about money, mental health, and financial capability. And I've used some stats and data from predominantly from two organizations called Money Charity and the Financial Capability Strategy by Money and Pension Service. But if you look at the first two bullet points where I've highlighted the figures, those who experience mental health problems persistently are 9.3 times more likely to report it finding difficult to manage financially. You see, so that is quite critical, that if you're mentally not feeling well or you're not in a good headspace, then actually you're going to struggle nearly 10 times more than somebody who's not struggling emotionally and mentally in your financial situation. Let's reverse it. And what it actually showed is struggling financially makes it 5.5 times more likely that you'll be experiencing a mental health problem compared to those who haven't been experiencing any financial difficulty. And can I just make something absolutely clear? When I'm saying mental health problems, that doesn't mean a diagnostic or where you have a diagnosis necessarily from a GP or a psychologist or a psychiatrist or any of that. These are your basic mental health problems. You could be suffering from symptoms of stress. You could be suffering from symptoms of anxiety. Doesn't mean you have clinical depression. Doesn't mean you have a diagnosed anxiety disorder. This just means your basic everyday mental health problems that could come in and out. And the longer they're there, the chances that it's going to affect your financial well-being is also going to exist as well. Other interesting figures are that, 10.7 million adults rarely or never save, and 11.5 million adults have less than £100 in saving. And then the last bullet point is, I think, the most crucial reality of the situation we're all in the country at the moment, is that 20% of working age adults often use a credit card, overdraft, or borrow money to buy food or pay bills because they run short of money. Now, these slides are not about whether somebody is rich, somebody's poor, somebody's well off, somebody's not well off, somebody's on benefits, somebody's employed, unemployed. These cover the whole range. And how are people managing their finances? And another interesting one here is that 50% of working age people in the UK live in households have less than 3 months' wages available in savings. And 20% or 25% of lone parents say they are paying unaffordable rents, and it's crippling them. So I just thought this would be quite useful for yourselves to have insight into. And then this is some other highlights from Salary Finance. And if I'm not mistaken, I think this is from 2022. And if you look at some of the ones that says 2 in 3 women between the ages of 42 to 57 are worried about their finances in the next 6 months, with 43% of them taking from their savings when they're short of money. 14.5 million employees say they're worried about their financial situation over the next 6 months. That is half the UK's workforce. That's 49%. So it's just interesting and very powerful figures that, none of us are alone in this. We all will go through the struggle at some point in our lives. The other stats that has come out is that we're needing extra money. Which of the following have you done in the last year? And you can see from that yellow box in there, the mustard looking box, that 39% of people who are in this survey took money from their savings, or then 33% said that they use their credit card. Now imagine if somebody has chosen both those options, because you had an option to choose 2 or more than one. If someone's used their savings and they're using their credit card, so that's where the stress and anxiety starts to build up, because yes, you're using it to pay off at that time, but then how are you going to recover from that as well? So it's just interesting figures that I thought I would go through, so that you're all aware that, it's not just 1 or 2 people or a few people who go through this. It's irrespective of salary bandings as well. It just happens to the best of us at all times as well. Sure, it's not changing. Yep. So money management. So to manage money, it's really important to consider some key aspects. And some of the things we all need to ask ourselves is, firstly, do I have any debts that I will struggle to pay? It's about being really, really clear with yourself, with your family, or anyone that you speak to about your money, or just with yourself, that, do you have any debts that you think you're going to struggle paying? Are you at risk of falling into debt? A classic example is, and that was, I'll share a personal example. I went through a relationship breakdown and I had 2 dogs. We got the dogs together. Financially, I was quite stable, comfortable, and all. After the relationship broke down, immediately I got myself into a panic, but I started asking myself, am I at risk of falling into debt or into some financial burden because now I'm fully responsible for 2 dogs? So it's those kind of questions to ask ourselves, which is really, really important. Am I keeping a regular budget and sticking to it? And Ivy will later speak about the budgeting as well. Am I claiming everything I'm entitled to? There's a lot of opportunities out there and a lot of checks that you can do to see that you are claiming everything that you're actually entitled to. And am I planning for my future goals in retirement? And the goals is not about having these flamboyant goals of, I need 100,000, 500,000 pounds in my saving, or 5,000 pounds in my saving when I retire. No, this is about protecting yourself, your health, your loved ones, and yourself as well, long term. What's going to happen after you retire? But what's going to happen even now, even if you're in your 20s, even if you're in your 30s, or in your 40s, if you get some health issue as well. So that's where the whole money management comes in. So the key things to think about is like your debt situation. If you're going to fall into debt by any chance, budgeting, how can you maximize your income, and planning for the future. The key thing to all of this is also you're going to hear them use this vocabulary about life events. If you know what life event you're going to go through, or you're going to go through it, or you're suddenly in the deep end of a life event, these are the things you need to think about. These are key things, elements of money management. And when I'm saying life events, it's things like risk of redundancy. If you think you might be at risk of redundancy, should you really be taking out a loan for a car? Should you be spending money on a lavish holiday if you think you're going to be at risk of redundancy? That's just one example. Another one is having a baby. Now, that is a major life event. So, it's about thinking of, can I go through this life event in a way that will financially I'm secure enough? Because the last thing you don't want as a parent, whether you're a father or a mother, that you come out of the after the 9-10 months, you have the baby and all, and suddenly you realize, oh my God, I can't manage financially. So it's to be prepared for the life event beforehand financially, so that you're protecting yourself as well. So that for me is absolutely key. Relationship breakdown is one. And let's focus a bit more on the positive. If anyone's thinking of getting married, all of this is a life event. So it's being aware of it and to protect yourself financially as well. Debt and managing your money. This is about just debt and budgeting, which I'm going to pass to Ivy now. She's the expert in this. So Ivy, I shall hand it over to you.
Thank you, Ava. So as Ava's mentioned, there are some sort of cornerstones to feeling financially fit. And one of these is budgeting. Now, to be able to understand our finances, as daunting as it is, so I'm going to preface this by saying this is not an easy exercise, sitting down and having a look at your budget. And it's something that I personally struggled with for a very long time. But when I reframed it in my mind, I saw it as investing time in myself and my future. So I started to spend a half an hour to sit down and look at my income, look at where I was spending my money, and almost being quite brutally honest with myself, like that gym membership that, I go to maybe once every 3 months. Is that worth the money that I'm spending on it? is that a priority for my future? And once you've done your budget, you've got that really clear picture. And actually, as you're working through some of these things, what you might see is, you might be pleasantly surprised that you're in a better financial position than you initially thought, or you might realize that you're perhaps spending a little bit more on certain bills. So you might want to, go and have a look at those and explore if there are other options. However, if we look at the possibly, slightly more challenging side, you might identify that you have a shortfall in your budget each month. So you might start to consider ways that you can make up that shortfall. Now, there's many different ways of doing that. It could be, anything as simple as, picking up extra hours. It could be looking at if you're entitled to anything, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation as well. It could be, selling things on Vinted that you no longer need. It could be looking at the rent a room scheme. There's lots of different options out there as well. Now, that being said, not all bills are created equal, and there are some that might surprise you. So there are some bills that are priority above others. Now, this is generally because they carry a heavier penalty. And one that surprises a lot of people is TV license. You might not think that your TV license is a priority bill, but it is. And we'll talk about a couple of tools that can help you prioritizing your bills. Now, if we've done our budget, we've prioritized our bills, and actually we are already in debt, or we think we might go into debt, as daunting as it is to pick up the phone, it is never too late to get debt advice from a financial conduct authority regulated debt advice provider. So we work very closely with PayPlan. They're regulated by the FCA, and you'll see their financial wellbeing hub link on the screen. So what they will do is they will talk to you, have a look at your circumstances. So if you've done your budget in advance, great, because they will ask you to do a budget. So there's no getting away from that, I'm afraid. And they will look at, what you have available, what can you pay towards your debts, which ones are the priorities, and what support they can offer you. And that range of support varies because there are many different debt products out there that they can support you with. The other thing, which is there on the screen, is breathing space. Now, breathing space is a relatively new debt option that gives a temporary protection from being chased from creditors. Now, if anyone's ever been in debt or, had those letters come through the post, there's that level of anxiety that comes with having to open one of those letters and constantly being chased on the phone and via post from people you owe money to and organizations you owe money to. So what breathing space does is it does create that space for you to breathe. So it freezes the interest rates, or most interest rates, I should say, fees and charges on debts, as well as pausing most enforcement action and contact from creditors. But to be able to access this short-term option, you need to do that through a debt advice organisation like PayPlan. So there's a couple of different types of breathing space. So there's the standard breathing space, which is the one that puts the pause in place for up to 60 days. And there's a review point within that. And then you've got the mental health crisis breathing space. Now, this one is specifically for people who are experiencing a mental health crisis and needs to be applied for by an approved mental health professional. And it lasts for the entirety of the treatment plus 30 days. So actually, this type is probably more difficult to come across than the standard breathing space. Now, Ava talked about building up a buffer, and a question that often gets asked is, how big of a buffer should I have? Now, the buffer is there to help us sort of navigate the storm, or, the changes in our lives when we experience life events like that possible redundancy that we were talking about, or like that relationship breakdown. So having that bit of a buffer basically means that should something happen, you're you've got something to fall back on to cushion your fall a little bit. Now, the rule of thumb is generally about 3 months worth of expenses, but I realise that in the current climate, and thinking of some of the figures that Ava mentioned earlier, it can be really challenging to save that much. However, if we've done our budget, we've prioritised our bills, we've sorted through our debts, we're looking at everything that, you know, we can claim to make sure that we've got everything that we're entitled to. Any little bit that we can save into that easy access savings account to create that buffer to help us for unexpected expenses will make things a lot easier. And that's what financial fitness is really about. It's about being able to go through those changes and feeling in control of those situations.
Thank you for that, Ivy. And before I just move to the next slide for Ivy, the one thing about budgeting is, you know, also being really comfortable with yourselves on what you can cut back as well. Sometimes, yes, you need to be ruthless. If you're really in dire straits, that's fine. But if you're okay, but you're on that, you know, that cliffhanger that you could potentially fall into debt, or you want to have a bit of a buffer, you know, be comfortable so that your own emotional well-being doesn't get impacted. So for example, one of the things I did this year in January, and this is again a personal example, I cut off my takeaways. I reduced my takeaway from 2 a week, I know it sounds terrible, to 1 a week. And then now it's basically once a month. However, just by reducing the takeaway, and also if you cut down 1 takeaway a week, and I'm taking it as a £30 round figure, and cutting up my gym membership, which I decided to do, I saved £150 a month. That's just immediate. I could feel that impact. So I think these are just things for you to think about, that, you know, what is it that you need versus what is it that you want? And then take that approach for budgeting. So it's not that daunting that, my God, I've got to cut everything off. Take an approach that you're comfortable with, or your family's comfortable with, as well. Ivy, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Ava. And to help with the budgeting aspect, actually, sometimes it's, you know, quite challenging to be able to look at those figures unless you've got them all written down. But
let me show the budget planner first.
Thank you. Yeah. So once you've got them all written down, as Ava said, you can sort of have a look at what those real savings will look like. And, you know, before the pandemic, when a lot of us were office based 5 days a week, I used to pick up a coffee at the train station for £3 every day. And actually, Ava sat me down and made me do the maths of how much I was spending on coffee each year. And once I put that all together, I was firstly horrified, and then realised that for that much I could buy myself quite a nice coffee machine and make myself the coffee at home and bring it with me. But it's putting all that on paper is a really cathartic exercise. It is quite daunting, but as I said earlier, if you see it as investing time in yourself, take 30 minutes this week, start the budget. You don't, you know, go onto the Money Helper website. You can save your budget. So that's what I've done. I set it up. I spent, you know, a couple of hours, cup of tea in hand, slice of cake to make it a bit of a, you know, fun activity with all my receipts and my banking app, and set it up. And then whenever anything changes, like my car insurance payments, I just log back in, change those figures. And what then happens is that my results get updated, and the personalized sort of tips at the end of my budget planner are updated based on my circumstances. And sometimes I use this to also look at, you know, if my circumstances were to change. So for example, you know, if I were to get made redundant, or if, you know, my partner were to get made redundant, what impact would that have on our household finances, and could we still manage? So it's quite a useful tool from that regard. And the other tool that I think is also really key to look at once we've done our budget is the bill prioritizer. So thank you, Ava. So what this tool does is it helps you sort through your bills and payments and identify what's priority and what actually you can wait till you've paid your priority bills. So again, it's tailored guidance for your circumstances. It will take you through a series of bills that you can highlight if you're worried about certain bills. And then at the end of it, it will give you a set of guidance that you can follow to have a look at which one to tackle first. So once we've done our budget, we've sorted through our bills, we've got debt advice if we need it, and we've started to look at, building up that buffer, what we can do is start to look at maximising our income.
And I'll come to that. And I think what I just wanted to point out on this slide is, if you look at the bottom left box, Ivy's already, we just did a practice run here and highlighted the bills we worried about. This was just a hypothetical. So, you can see in the bold pink color, she highlighted council tax and then income tax or VAT bills, VAT. But you can see on the right side, what it's now recommended that you do immediately is talk to your local council and focus on the council tax or rates. So you can see, based on what you're worried about, it'll do the calculations and the recommendations to you as to which ones you need to focus on and what practical steps you need to do. And the other thing I think we should have just explained a bit before is, any of the organizations that we are mentioning here, that all free of charge, they won't charge you any money, and they are all regulated by the FCA as well. I think that's just important to point out. And I remove this for you.
Thank you, Ava. So maximising your income sounds like a very sort of complicated, fancy term, but effectively it's about looking at the income that you're getting and making sure that you're claiming everything that you might be entitled to. So that, even if you're earning quite a good salary and you think you might not be entitled to any benefits, there might be certain benefits that, depending on your household circumstances or your specific circumstances, that you might be entitled to. Equally, there might be some grants. So there's organisations out there that do sector specific grants, or location specific grants, so if you live in a certain area of the country. So it's about having a look at those and seeing if there is anything else that you might be entitled to or able to claim for. Now, the other big thing is shopping around and looking at saving money on your household bills. Now, we all know it can be really, really challenging and daunting and a little bit frustrating to try and phone up our energy supplier or our internet supplier to try and get a better deal. But actually, so a lot of us stay with those suppliers for a really, really long time, even though we're not getting the best value out of them. So actually, one of the things that we can do, and again, this is investing in yourself and, investing in your future financial fitness, is shopping around. There's several websites that you can have a look at. So Money Supermarket, for example, there's lots of different sort of comparison websites, if you will, that you can have a look at to see what deals are out there. There might be that you get special deals through like your bank or your insurance provider, and actually sometimes the best deals are reserved for new customers. So it might be a situation of having a slightly challenging conversation and advocating for yourself with your current provider of the deals that they have on for new customers. And all of that time that you're investing, if you can save yourself, £10 a week over the course of a year, that becomes possibly, a holiday, or it means not falling into debt and having that shortfall each month that you might have. So there's lots of other options as well. So some people might choose to take on extra hours at work to up their income. And just a little practical tip, if you tend to work sort of overtime occasionally or have a slightly variable income, is to have a look at your income as a 12-month, so a yearly figure, and then divide that by 12. And just remembering that, some of that overtime may not be guaranteed. So sort of factoring that into your calculations. So to help us identify whether there are any benefits that we might be entitled to, there's several benefits calculators out there. The Money Helper one is one of these. There's another one on Turn to Us, and they also have a grants checker, so you can have a look at any grants that you might be entitled to. But effectively, what these tools are set up to do is to capture information about your circumstances and your household, and then as a result, give you anything that you might be entitled to apply for. Now, when I say entitled to apply for, you still would need to be approved for some of those benefits as part of your application process, but it will look at your household, if you're working, what your salary is, if you have a partner, if they're working, if you have any dependents, where you are in the country, because some of those rules change depending on which country in the UK you're in, what benefits might be available. Now, just to say that if you've gone through a life event or a life change or a change of circumstances, it's always worthwhile to update your budget, but also to do one of these benefits calculators, because there may be things that you might be entitled to that you weren't entitled to before.
Thank you. Right. And I think this is just leading on from what Ivy said about planning for the future. It's about being prepared for anything unexpected and also for retirement. So any of you who are here who are much more on the younger side and you might not have thought about retirement, this is also just about making sure that you do protect yourself and your future. And that's why I've got it really big highlighted at the bottom of being aware of life events. We don't know what's going to come our way. So it's about trying to put some little money every month to help you cope with any sudden shocks, with sudden events that have taken place in your life that you weren't really prepared for, which is now going to have a financial impact on you. For example, a washing machine or a boiler or the fridge has packed up. These are expensive things to get, and you might not be prepared for it for that month because you've gone and dished out quite a lot of money if you've got a child, maybe for the after school club that month, and now you weren't ready and prepared for this outgoing. So it's these things. It's to protect yourself for as well. Savings can also be helpful in giving you one less thing to worry about when you're trying to cope with a lot of, a different life event, which is quite challenging. So like a divorce or a separation. So it's always good to be as well financially as you can be, so that when you are going through a difficult life event, at least you've got one less thing potentially to worry about. And planning for the unexpected. Another one is, do you have adequate property, health, life insurance in place? This is really important about insurances. There's different ones, like, for critical illnesses, long-term illnesses, any of those to protect your health, whether you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever it is, the age bracket that you belong to. It's really time to start thinking about insurances. Till 6 years ago, I used to play badminton for Division B in London. I was very active, played sports all my life, and then suddenly within 24 hours, my back packed up and I was bedridden for 3 months. It was in 24 hours, literally my life changed, where forget playing sports, I couldn't even walk properly or leave my apartment. And actually, I did have insurance at that time to protect myself. My work were very supportive, but I had a buffer, a financial buffer to protect myself in case something went wrong, because I didn't know what my health would look like, because it was a constant medical checks that I was going through for quite a few months and or for a few years as well. So it's about thinking that, we just don't know what's going to happen to us. So I think it's about thinking of that. The other thing is about bereavement as well. Now, it might not happen to your immediate family, but what if it happens to somebody outside your immediate family, but then you start becoming responsible for caring for them? And also, it's just about thinking of all of those things as well. That are you protecting yourself financially by having that buffer, but it's about the insurances for your property as well. So if, for example, another one could be is that even if you're renting, yes, your landlord might have the property insurance, the building insurance and all, but what about the contents? Is that something you should be having as well? So it's just about thinking of those things as well for yourself. And especially if you're an owner of a property, doesn't matter how small, how big, it's about protecting yourself. Are you saving for your retirement? And do you know how much you will need to retire? And, that comes on quite nicely to the next one. Ivy is better at explaining that. So, Ivy, I will pass this one to you. But I love the sound of this. And we all used to work for Money and Pension Service. They own the Money Helper tool. So I'm quite big on this, the Money Midlife MOT. But I will let Ivy go through this.
Thank you, Ava. So trying to work out, how much money you need to retire on feels a bit like a moving target, or, like it could be a bit of an arbitrary figure. But also it's often something that we start to think about a little bit later in our career. But I think more and more people are starting to have those conversations and those thoughts. And this tool is particularly helpful if you're sort of within that 45 to 65 bracket. So you're kind of going through that midlife transitional phase where you're starting to think more about, retirement, or you're getting ready to retire. And what this tool will do is it will take you through a series of questions. It only takes about 5 minutes to complete. And then it will give you a personalized report and help you think of things that you might want to consider. Now, some of those things could be budgeting to see if you can eke out a little bit more from your budget to put into your retirement fund and into your pension plan. It could be estate planning. It could be starting to look at things like powers of attorney, or, inheritance tax, or what happens with your property. So it's all about getting you set up for later in life and kind of giving you an action plan that you can work through. The other useful thing that we don't have in the slide, but I thought I'd mention anyway before we move on to the next slide, is having a look at, a pensions calculator. Look at, again, I'm going to sound like the very boring one that does nothing at her weekend, but sit down and go through all her paperwork and work through things. But it is really helpful to try and have a look at what pensions you have. A lot of us change jobs throughout our careers and we lose track of our pensions, and, we're not sure what's where. But actually sitting down and trying to come to grips with that, to work out what's where, to then get some guidance and advice around what to do. Is it a good idea to consolidate those? Is it a better idea to leave them where they are? To then have a look at actually what can I expect my retirement income to be? If I put all of those figures into a calculator and say, the type of lifestyle that I might want to have, am I on track, or do I have a shortfall that I need to somehow start thinking about? Now, I'm going to use quite a personal example. I worked for an organisation when I was much, much younger, when my salary wasn't great, but we had a very good pension scheme. And at the time, in my early 20s, I was thinking, well, actually, I'm not that bothered about the pension scheme. I want the money in my pocket. But now that I'm a little bit older, I kind of think back to that and think, wow, what a really great retirement scheme that was. And it's those kinds of things of thinking through some of this and thinking more towards the future that this tool will help you do, but also some of those pensions calculators to work out what your pension income or your retirement income will be. And another good thing that might be worth doing, Ava, if you could move the slides on for us, is having a look at your state pension forecast. Now, that's how much state pension you could get, but also when you can get it, because that date is different for people, and how to increase it if you can. So, for example, you can pay towards, voluntary contributions to have a year of national insurance contributions count towards your state pension. So if you go through that tool, it'll ask you for some information, and it will let you know when you can expect to be able to claim the state pension and whether you would be claiming full state pension if you carry on as you are, or whether actually you might want to consider making some voluntary contributions for the last few tax years. And as I said, we've potentially, a lot of us have worked for different organisations. We might have lost track of pensions paperwork. And the government has a pensions tracing service. So you can go through, put in the name of the employer or the name of the pension scheme, if you remember it, and find contact details for your pension provider. So you can reach out to them and try to find any pensions that you may have lost over the years or lost paperwork for. So that will give you a better picture of your financial circumstances for retirement and help you to plan for those.
Thank you, Ivy. Can I take the next slide?
Yeah, of course you can.
I think we're coming towards the end, which will then open up for some questions and all as well. So what we decided to do was actually list some organizations and agencies that will really help support you if you've got any worries of financial well-being, related to financial well-being, or just, where you can read and, become aware of things, how to manage your finances probably in a more effective manner. Now with CiC, obviously, we are your employee assistance program provider. But, if you are worried and you suddenly think, I don't actually know who to now go to, is it pay plan? Is it citizens advice, money helper? This slide is there also for yourself to just think it's okay whether you contact pay plan or money helper. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because they're all regulated and the outcome should be the same. But actually, you can call us as well or drop us an email, and one of our clinicians will always support you and listen to you and understand, and then we will help you get to the right place. So there's nothing as such to be, well, I'm saying nothing as such to be worried about. Of course, it's a worry, but you can still always just call us and then we'll point you in the right direction as well. So I think that's just a reassurance to yourself as well. Pay plan is there for debt advice, budgeting support. They're absolutely brilliant. And the work they do with us is really been effective with people who contact us. Turn to Us is there as well, which Ivy's spoken about. There is citizens advice as well. Depending on the area you live in, some will allow the walk-in service, but with some you have to do it online or the phone call. But if there's anything about universal credit, we've just put a link in there. But generally, citizens advice for a lot of elements are very helpful and all. The Money Helper, which is run by Money and Pension Service, is government-backed guidance service as well. They're all for free. And it's got a lot of information, but not where it's overwhelming. They've broken it down into streams, life events, so that it's easier to understand and absorb it all. Last but not the least is PensionWise. And this is all to do with pensions and retirement. And it's more to do with the guidance to over 50s. And all, but if you just want general pensions, but you're under 50 and all, there's always the Money Helper website, and there's a phone call as well, a phone number there, and you can contact them. I think before I just move to the next, the last slide before opening up for question, I think it's really important to understand that you're not alone in this journey. The budget was just recently announced. The cost of living is just going up and up and up. The Bank of England keeps announcing these interest rates, which fluctuates, where sometimes it's down, sometimes it goes up. It's good to just acknowledge that, it's going to be difficult. And what I'm saying is good to acknowledge is just accepting it, that actually bills will keep fluctuating. Some will go high, some will go low. But actually, it's about being comfortable within yourself that are you okay in managing that fluctuation and that cost of living? And if you're not alone in this, and there's other organizations, support agencies. If you feel you're suffering from sleepless nights, don't wait for that one-off sleepless night to become every single day. Contact us. If you feel that you know what the cause of those sleepless nights are, if it's linked with finance, call up the organizations for support, call up like Pay Plan. There's others as well, there's Step Change as well. There's loads of other organizations, which is also on your gov.uk website. or on the Citizens Advice website. There's quite a few organizations there. It's always being aware of what are you struggling with. Don't wait for a crisis to happen to get the help. If you know something's going to happen or you're at risk of that happening, get the help. If any of you right now on this webinar are already in that situation where you're in crisis or financial detriment or not, it's still not late. These debt organizations are really used to working with financially vulnerable people. And when I'm saying financially vulnerable, it doesn't mean unemployed people. They're fully employed. They could be on high salaries as well, but they're financially vulnerable. So it's about making that difficult first step and making that call, and getting the help that you need.
And actually, Ava, I think just to add to that, one thing that is really, really key is that no one in any of these organisations will ever judge anyone for their circumstances or the financial position that they find themselves in. As a lot of us know, we experience different life events and we find ourselves coming out of the other side where things have happened outside of our control that we're then trying to piece back together and get back to sort of regaining some of that control, whether it be financially or with our mental or physical well-being. And no one in any of these organisations will ever judge anyone. They're there to support people and help them through with any financial challenges that they have that have either happened already or that they think might happen.
Thank you for that. And I think just before I move to the next one, sorry about that, there's one other thing that's just come into my head, is I read this very interesting report late last night. And again, it was by Salary Finance, and they did a survey right across the UK, across a lot of employed people of different salary ranges and all. And what they found was that people are very comfortable, are comfortable talking to the employers about, certain stresses they're going through, whether it be emotional, mental well-being, or some family circumstances that happen and they want some support from work. But actually, financial well-being is the fourth last one, that people stay away from talking about that at work because it's very personal and very difficult. And there's always a fear of being judged by your manager or somebody else, your peer at work. So this is an acknowledgement that actually finances to talk at work is quite difficult and can be quite challenging, and emotionally it can bring up quite a few things for yourselves as well. And that's where these organizations are there, and CiC, we as an organization are there as well to support. The last one is a slide that Ivy and I've put together of some questions that people ask us about financial well-being. I'm not sure if any of these are, relevant to yourselves or not, but the question that we get asked is, how much money should I even have in my emergency savings account? Now, we know most of the UK and the stats show that people barely even have £100 in their savings account. But actually, in an emergency savings account, the rule of thumb is to have at least 3 months. Because if there's an emergency or anything happened, you don't have that initial worry. You've got the 3 months there. But that's there. Scams, guys, that's a big one. Please, I'm literally pleading with you. This was one of the big things that we were working on when we worked in the last organization, is people getting scammed all kinds of way. And you won't get a call from HMRC directly asking for a tax outstanding amount. Don't answer doors to, people who want to come and do work for you in the house or anything. The minute you start taking those people on for pieces of work at your house and they run off with your money, your bank will not refund you. They will not give that money back because you put yourself in a situation of not checking that person or that organization out that were just knocking on your door as well. So there's quite a few here for different ones as well. Just we thought it would be quite useful. Ivy, I'll pass it to you because I can't see if anyone's put in questions in the chat. Ivy has access to it.
So just to say, we've had a question about a copy of the slides. So we don't release the copy of the slides, but we will be uploading the recording to the YouTube channel. So you can get, if you need to sort of refer back to any of the information, that information will be on that recording. And I think another key question that I just
sorry,
wanted.
what we can do for the slides is if anyone really does want the slide deck specifically, is to just drop in an email and we'll see what we can do and all. So if you just drop an email if you desperately want the slide deck, and then we can see how we can share it out.
Or if it's just the links that you wanted access to on the slide deck. I think I did say this whilst we were talking earlier, but it's about reviewing and reevaluating financial plans as well. This isn't it, much like physical and mental health well-being. This isn't something that you just do once and then it's done. It's something that, you know, needs to be worked on consistently. So it's when you're having a change of circumstances, when you think you're going to have a you know, a life event, whether it's, you know, you don't always get much warning with life events, with certain life events, but if you think that it is something that you can, that you're going to experience, it's about reevaluating those financial plans and kind of looking at what that change does to that financial picture for you. And I think the other really sort of big one that people sometimes might not be aware of, and again, there's absolutely no shame in this at all, is how to check your credit score. It's something that so much depends on, like your ability to, you know, apply for loans and get approved for loans or mortgages. But effectively, you can check your credit score for free. So you've got Money Saving Experts, Credit Club, Clear Score, and Credit Karma. Now, all three of those use different credit referencing agencies, so they might have slightly different information that they hold about you. So it's always a sort of good rule of thumb to check a couple, just to have a look at what's on there. If there's anything that you notice that is out of place, you can submit a notice of correction. But there's also a couple of things that you can do to improve your credit score if perhaps it's not looking its best. One of those things is making sure you're on the electoral roll registry, because that can help improve your credit score. And if you can stay below ideally 50% credit utilization, if you have any lines of credit like credit cards and the like, and paying your bills on time. I know it seems like the most obvious one and often forgotten about, but actually that all together ends up forming the picture that the credit referencing agencies have of you. So it's a good one to keep an eye on. I became a bit obsessive about checking my credit score at one point. I quite liked to see it go up and would get really disappointed with myself when it went down. But it's one of those things that actually sometimes something might change one month that might have a little bit of a dip, but it will stabilize itself. So don't be too discouraged if, you know, things kind of take a downward turn one month and then go back to normal another month, but it is worth keeping an eye on those.
Thank you for that. And like I said, if anyone does want the email via an email, any of the slides or the referral agencies and all, please just drop us an email. I'm guessing most of you should have the email access to CiC. So please just do that. Ivy, are there any other questions?
No questions, just we've had some people request some of the links, so that's something that we can review after and try and arrange.
Okay, and I'm guessing we should have the email addresses of people who joined in.
So we can double check that information. So we will be uploading the recording in the next couple of weeks, and as far as I've been told, I don't think we can circulate the full slide deck, but we can possibly share some links.
Yeah, so we'll find a one way or the other, because it's absolutely important that you have access to our recommendations of the support agencies. That's really important for yourselves to have. Ivy, about the support agencies, is there a way you can copy that slide at least and put it into the chat option of the support agency so that they've got at least a screenshot of that? That would be quite handy. You know, so it's this one. So if you can at least just do that, and yeah, But all I want to just say is thank you very much for your time. That you've taken out of your day to come join Ivy and myself on this webinar. If there's any other recommendations that you feel we need to do something else, because obviously this is a very generic one, we can do some other specific ones as well. So for example, if there's a specific one on pensions, suppose, or insurances, how do you even start looking at insurance and protection and all, so things like that. Give us the recommendations, either put it in this chat or contact us via email and just say, look, I attended this. I think it'd be good if the next one is X, Y, and Z, and then if there's more focus on this. We're always open for feedback, and also it would be really helpful to us. But I think I just wanted to thank on behalf of Ivy and myself for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.